Everyone thought the billionaire's only son was dying. Doctors said he had no more than 3 months left. His father, Arthur Sterling, a man devastated and desperate, tried every treatment money could buy, but nothing worked. Nurses came and went, but the boy stayed silent, weak, and fading fast. Then one day, a new janitor was hired. He seemed ordinary, a single dad named Alex, quiet and careful, just doing his job. But as days passed, he noticed things no one else did. He paid attention, thought about questions no one dared to ask, and then he found something that changed everything. What he discovered didn't just give hope. It uncovered a shocking secret that had been hidden for years. Arthur Sterling was once a titan of industry. He owned a portfolio of successful companies and was revered for his sharp mind and commanding leadership. But after the tragic death of his wife, everything changed. He retreated from the world, stepping down from his boards and moving into a large, quiet mansion far from the city. The place was modern and filled with expensive art, but it felt cold and empty. Arthur rarely spoke to anyone. He kept to himself, a recluse in his own home. His only focus now was his son, Leo. Leo had been diagnosed with a rare cancer when he was very young. The treatment was brutal. His hair fell out, and he became frail and weak. Arthur stayed by his side every day, personally overseeing his care, trying to coax a spark of life back into him. But even though he was always there, Leo didn't speak much. He remained quiet, distant, and often stared at nothing in particular, as if he were lost in a world no one else could see. Arthur tried to bring happiness back into Leo's life. He spent a fortune hiring the best doctors and child therapists. He brought in tutors, music instructors, and even animal handlers with therapy dogs to see if any of them could get a reaction from his son. He bought him rare comic books, intricate model kits, and anything he showed even a flicker of interest in. But nothing worked. Leo didn't smile. He didn't play. He didn't talk. Sometimes he would just sit for hours in his room or by the window, a small, still figure in a vast, silent house. Arthur felt helpless. He wanted to fix this problem like he fixed problems in his business, with strategy and resources. But this was different. Leo wasn't just sick, he seemed unreachable. No matter what he did, he couldn't bring back the light in his son's eyes. The silence between them was a heavy, suffocating blanket. Arthur missed the little boy who used to laugh and ask endless questions. Now, he was like a shadow of his former self. Every morning, Arthur followed a strict routine. He would wake up early, review Leo's chart, and personally check his medication. Nurses came in daily to help with his care, but Arthur insisted on being part of everything. He watched over his health with obsessive precision, keeping a notebook of his reactions and progress. The house was always immaculate, meals were always on time, and every detail was under his control. He thought that through sheer organization, he could keep the situation from getting worse. But even though everything around them was perfectly managed, nothing felt right. The silence in the house was louder than any noise. Leo rarely spoke a word. Sometimes he would nod or shake his head, but most of the time he didn't respond at all. Arthur kept trying, hoping that one day something would change. He was always looking for signs of improvement, but the days went by slowly, always the same, without any real progress. Arthur often blamed himself for everything. He believed that if he had done something differently, maybe his wife would still be alive and maybe Leo wouldn't be suffering so much. He remembered the happy days when their family was complete. Those memories were a torment now. He kept old family photos in a locked drawer, but he couldn't bring himself to look at them. They reminded him of all that he had lost. He carried his guilt like a physical weight on his shoulders. At night, when Leo was asleep, he would sit in his office staring into the darkness, thinking about the past. His friends had stopped calling. His employees managed the companies without him. He didn't care anymore. All that mattered was Leo. He thought maybe if he could make him better, he could forgive himself. But day after day, Leo stayed silent, and Arthur stayed broken. Alex Thorne had been through his own crucible of pain. Just a year earlier, he had lost his own young son in a sudden, tragic accident. The loss was a void that consumed his life. He quit his well-paying office job and moved to a smaller apartment, seeking anonymity. Every corner of his home reminded him of the boy he had lost. Alex didn't speak much to others and spent his days wrapped in a quiet grief. One morning, while browsing job ads online, he saw a post for a janitor in a large private residence, requiring help with light maintenance and cleaning. The job didn't ask for specific experience, just someone patient, responsible, and discreet. Alex felt a pull toward it. Maybe it was the quiet setting, or perhaps the idea of a simple, structured job where he wouldn't have to pretend to be okay. Without overthinking, he applied. When Alex arrived at the mansion, the first thing he noticed was the profound silence. The house was large and pristine, but it didn't feel like a home. It was too clean, too still. Arthur Sterling met him at the door. He didn't smile, but he spoke with a formal kindness. He explained that the job was straightforward, but that his son, Leo, was very ill and required a quiet environment. He expected Alex to be unobtrusive and maintain a respectful distance. Alex accepted the terms and moved into a small apartment over the garage. He noticed that other staff members didn't stay long. They came and went quickly, whispering that the job was too depressing, but Alex wasn't overwhelmed. He was accustomed to pain and silence. Something about the house mirrored how he felt inside. Calm on the surface, shattered within. In the first few days, Alex did his tasks quietly. He polished the floors, maintained the gardens, and helped the nurse carry supplies. He didn't try to interact with Leo right away. Instead, he watched from a distance. Leo spent most of his time in his room or sitting near a window. He never asked for anything and rarely responded to anyone. Alex noticed the boy didn't even look at people when they spoke to him. But what struck Alex the most was not just Leo's illness. It was the way Leo seemed utterly alone. It wasn't just physical weakness, there was an emotional emptiness there, too. Alex recognized that kind of silence. It was the same hollow feeling he had lived with since losing his own child. He didn't see Leo as just a sick boy. He saw someone who had lost something vital inside, just like he had. Alex began to make small, quiet efforts to connect. He didn't use words. Instead, he used actions. One day, he noticed a vintage model plane on Leo's shelf with a broken propeller. The next day, he left a tiny, perfectly carved wooden propeller beside it. He placed a rare, mint-condition comic book on a table near where Leo sat, not a bright, flashy one, but a classic from a bygone era. He never said anything about these gestures, but he saw Leo turn his head and look at the items for a long moment. It was a small reaction, but it was something. Alex also started sitting in the hallway outside Leo's room sometimes, sketching quietly in a small notebook. He never intruded. He simply wanted to be a calm presence, to be close without making Leo feel pressured. Over time, Leo started glancing at him, then holding his eye contact for a few seconds. Alex always responded with a soft, encouraging nod, never pushing for more. He knew that building trust with someone in pain took time and immense patience. Arthur noticed the difference. At first, he said nothing, but he paid attention. Unlike other employees, Alex never tried to impress him. He wasn't overly cheerful, and he didn't act like he could fix things. He just did his work and treated Leo with a quiet, profound respect. Arthur felt a subtle shift in the atmosphere. Alex's presence wasn't loud, but it filled a space that had been empty for far too long. One evening, he walked past Leo's door and saw the boy holding the comic book Alex had left for him, carefully turning the pages. It was the first time in months he had picked something up on his own. That night, Arthur found Alex in the workshop and thanked him. Not with grand words, just a simple, thank you, that carried significant weight. He didn't ask him to do more. He just told him to keep being himself. That was enough. As the days passed, Alex and Leo developed a quiet understanding. There were no long conversations, but small moments of connection began to appear. Leo would let Alex sit beside him without moving away. Sometimes Alex would bring his sketchbook and find a new drawing later, slipped under his door, a simple pencil sketch of a bird or a tree. These small things told Alex that Leo was starting to trust him. The pain that Alex carried helped him see Leo differently, not as a patient, but as a person. He didn't try to fix Leo's sadness. He simply stayed close, gently reminding him that he wasn't alone. For Alex, it was no longer just a job. He felt that maybe, through helping Leo, he could also begin to heal a part of himself that had been broken for so long. One afternoon, Alex was quietly tidying Leo's room while the boy rested. Leo had started to allow Alex to get closer, to adjust his blankets or bring him a glass of water. As Alex gently smoothed the blanket over him, Leo shifted slightly and mumbled something in a low, distressed voice. Alex froze when he heard the words, "It hurts." "Don't touch, Dad." His hand stopped in midair. He didn't say anything right away, his mind racing to process what had just happened. Leo had called him Dad, but it wasn't a mistake of affection. Leo's voice had been laced with fear, as if the pain he felt was more than just physical. Alex looked at him gently, but Leo's eyes were squeezed shut, his small hand gripping the edge of the blanket. Alex slowly pulled his hand back. "Okay," he whispered. "I'm done." He didn't ask questions or push for an explanation, but inside, his mind was spinning. Leo had barely spoken more than a single word before. This was different. It wasn't just the word Dad that stood out. It was the terrified tone. There was a raw, painful memory behind it. Alex didn't know what to think, but he knew something was deeply wrong. Leo's reaction wasn't just about the blanket. It was about something else. Something Alex didn't understand yet, but felt a desperate need to find out. After leaving Leo's room, a silent doubt began to form inside him, a doubt that wouldn't go away. In the days that followed, Alex paid closer attention. He noticed how Leo flinched when someone, especially Arthur, walked too close behind him. He saw how Leo would become very still and quiet whenever his father entered the room to administer his medication. None of these things were obvious, but added together, they painted a disturbing picture. He also began to wonder why Leo never spoke about his mother. Children often talked about parents who passed away, but Leo said nothing. Alex asked Arthur once, in a casual tone, if Leo ever talked about his mother. He received a short, clipped answer. Not really. The topic was clearly closed. That response only deepened Alex's doubt. The silence around Leo's past started to feel heavier than before. One evening, while cleaning out a dusty storage room, Alex found a box of old photo albums. Curious, he opened one. There were pictures of Arthur, his beautiful wife, and a baby Leo. They looked like a happy, vibrant family. But after a few pages, the album was empty. There were no pictures of Leo growing up, no school photos, no birthday parties. It was as if his life had stopped being documented. Alex closed the album and put it back, but the questions were growing louder in his head. Why was Leo's history so empty? Why did Arthur avoid certain topics? Something was being hidden. He was sure of it now. From that moment on, Alex started looking for clues, not to be invasive, but because he felt a profound responsibility. He had come to care for Leo deeply. That one pained phrase, "Don't touch, Dad," had changed everything. It had opened a door in Alex's mind, and he knew he had to walk through it. During his free time, Alex began a quiet search for understanding. One afternoon, while cleaning a closet near the basement, he found several cardboard boxes filled with old medical supplies. He pulled one down and opened it. Inside were pill bottles, injection kits, and vials with labels he had never seen before. The dates were from years ago, and they all had Leo's name on them. As Alex looked through the contents, he noticed something strange. Many of the drugs were not common. Some had stark warnings printed in red. Others had complex chemical names he didn't recognize. Alex decided to take a few photos with his phone to look up later. That night, after the house was quiet, Alex sat on his bed and began researching. Some were standard drugs used in cancer treatments, but others were harder to find. He finally found information on a few that were listed for experimental use only, especially in children. The listed side effects were severe organ damage, hormonal disruption, and profound psychological effects. One drug had even been suspended in several countries due to safety concerns. Alex's heart hammered in his chest. He now wondered if Leo's weakness and sensitivity were not just from his illness. These were not normal treatments. Why were they used on him? Who approved this? Alex felt sick. This wasn't just about a disease anymore. This was about possible harm. He didn't sleep well that night. Did Arthur know about the risks? Or was he trusting a doctor blindly? The next day, Alex continued his tasks, but his focus had shifted. When the nurse brought Leo's daily medicine, Alex paid close attention to the labels and dosages. He also started glancing at Leo's medical files, which were kept in Arthur's office. He never took anything, but he scanned some of the notes when Arthur stepped out. The deeper he looked, the more he felt something was terribly wrong. His hand shook slightly as he closed a folder. Something serious was being hidden, and it involved Leo's health directly. Alex knew he couldn't carry this alone, but confronting Arthur was a monumental step. If Arthur was innocent, the accusation could shatter him. If he was guilty, Alex could put himself and Leo at risk. So, he chose to wait, to gather more proof. He started keeping a small notebook, writing down everything he observed, medication names, times, Leo's reactions. He needed a plan, but most of all, he needed to protect Leo, even if it meant going against the most powerful man he had ever met. One quiet afternoon, Arthur was out for a rare meeting, and the nurse had stepped away. Alex was in the living room with Leo, who was lying on the couch. Suddenly, Leo sat up slowly and looked at Alex. His eyes weren't scared this time. Instead, they looked tired, heavy with a burden no child should carry. Leo crawled over to where Alex sat on the floor, gently leaned forward, and placed his arms around Alex's neck. The hug was light but real. Alex froze, surprised by the sudden closeness. Then he wrapped his arms around Leo, holding him carefully. That was when Leo whispered something so softly, it was almost lost in the silence. He said, "Don't leave me, Dad." Alex felt his body go rigid, and his eyes instantly filled with tears. He just held Leo, staying completely still. The words echoed in his mind. It wasn't a mistake. It was a plea, full of fear and a deep wish not to be alone. Alex gently kissed the top of Leo's head and whispered, "I'm not going anywhere." He meant every word. That moment solidified everything for Alex. If Leo trusted him this much, he couldn't walk away. He had to protect him. It was no longer about just staying close. Now it was about fighting for him, no matter what. Arthur returned home early. He entered the house quietly and walked toward Leo's room, where he heard soft voices. The door was slightly open. He saw Alex sitting on the floor beside Leo, gently holding him as the boy leaned his head on his chest. It was a moment of pure, gentle care. Arthur stopped, watching, and then stepped inside without warning. His voice was ice. "What are you doing?" Alex stood up quickly, confused by his tone. Richard looked furious. "Are you trying to take advantage of him? He's a fragile boy. He doesn't think clearly." Alex was shocked. He tried to explain, but Arthur's voice grew louder. But then something happened that neither of them expected. Leo looked up, his face a mask of fear, and suddenly ran to Alex. He wrapped his arms tightly around his waist. "Dad, don't let him yell," he cried, loud enough for Arthur to hear. The room went completely silent. Arthur's face changed instantly. He looked at Leo, then at Alex, his anger dissolving into stunned confusion. Leo was holding on to Alex as if for dear life. Arthur sat down on the edge of the bed, suddenly looking defeated. "He called you Dad," he said, his voice barely a whisper. Alex nodded slowly. "It just happened. He said he needed someone. And I was there." Arthur looked at his son, really looked at him for the first time in years. He saw his fear, his sadness, his desperate need for protection. And he realized that maybe Leo's weakness wasn't only from the cancer. Maybe the years of aggressive treatments, the isolation, the silence, maybe he, in his grief-stricken attempt to control everything, had been part of the problem. He stood up and walked out of the room without another word. Later that night, Arthur went into his office and opened Leo's medical file. He read through the medication lists, the dosages, the doctor's recommendations. Some of the drugs now seemed terribly wrong, far too strong. The next morning, he told the nurse to stop administering several of them. He gave no reason. He just said they were no longer needed. Over the next few days, Alex noticed small but clear differences in Leo. He seemed more awake. He ate a little more and showed interest in a new model kit. These were things he hadn't done in years. Arthur observed from a distance. He saw Leo smile once, a faint but genuine smile. That single expression hit him harder than any medical report. He started to wonder if stopping the medications had helped. The thought terrified him, but it also gave him something he hadn't felt in a long time, a flicker of hope. Alex, needing definitive proof, took one of the old medicine vials to a doctor friend, Carla. 2 days later, she called back, her voice grim. The vial contained a powerful experimental drug, dosed at 3 times the amount considered safe for a child. It could cause extreme fatigue, organ damage, and suppress normal brain function. Alex's hands went cold. This was no longer suspicion. This was confirmation. He knew who had prescribed it, Dr. Marcus Thorne, the specialist Arthur had trusted implicitly since Leo's diagnosis. Alex brought the lab report straight to Arthur. Arthur read it, his face growing pale. "I trusted him," he whispered. He promised he could save him. Together, they began digging into Dr. Thorne's background. It didn't take long to find a disturbing pattern. Dr. Thorne had been investigated years earlier for questionable treatments. There were legal disputes with other families whose children had developed severe health problems under his care. The cases had been settled quietly, but the signs were all there. Their anger grew into a cold resolve. This wasn't just a mistake, it was a history of damage disguised as treatment. Arthur, finally shaken from his grief-fueled paralysis, used his resources to contact other families. Their stories were heartbreakingly similar. They decided they couldn't stay silent anymore. They had to expose Dr. Thorne. They hired a lawyer and began preparing a case. What started with one vial of medicine had now turned into a fight for justice. With the help of their lawyer and the support from other affected families, they took their evidence to the district attorney. The prosecutor listened and promised a formal investigation. It soon came to light that Dr. Thorne had connections with pharmaceutical companies, receiving kickbacks to test unapproved medications on vulnerable patients. Children like Leo had been used as unwitting subjects in secret drug trials. The story exploded in the media. But with the attention came attacks. Anonymous articles appeared online accusing Arthur of being a neglectful father. Others claimed Alex was a manipulator. They received threats, telling them to drop the case. But neither of them considered giving up. "If they're scared," Alex said calmly, "it means we're doing something right." As the trial against Dr. Thorne began, the courtroom was packed. One by one, parents took the stand, telling their painful stories. Alex testified calmly, detailing his discovery. Then it was Arthur's turn. He stood before the court and admitted his own failing. He spoke of his blinding grief, his misplaced trust, and how his desperate need for control had made him miss the truth. His raw honesty was powerful. Leo did not appear in court, but his presence was felt. During the trial, one of his drawings was presented as evidence. It was a simple picture, a small boy standing between 2 men, holding their hands. The boy had no hair, but he was smiling. Underneath, Leo had written, "I feel safe now." A quiet hush fell over the courtroom. The drawing became a symbol of what the trial was about: healing, truth, and the fight to protect the innocent. The jury took only 2 days to reach a verdict, guilty on all counts. Dr. Thorne was sentenced to a long prison term, and the case prompted a nationwide review of patient safety regulations for experimental treatments on children. After the trial, life in the mansion transformed. The cold silence was replaced with warmth and laughter. Arthur and Alex, once a grieving billionaire and a grieving janitor, had become a family, bound by their shared love for Leo. They enrolled Leo in a local school. He was nervous at first but quickly found his place. His talent for drawing blossomed, and his notebooks filled with colorful images of his new life. The boy who once barely spoke now made friends, answered questions in class, and found his voice. Years passed. Leo grew into a strong, confident young man, his passion for art shaping his future. He was accepted into a prestigious art school with a full scholarship. It was hard to say goodbye, but Arthur and Alex knew he was ready. Several years later, Leo held his first professional art exhibition. The gallery walls told his story, from the dark, muted sketches of his illness to the vibrant, colorful paintings of his recovery and the two fathers who saved him. At the opening night, Leo stood before the crowd, his voice clear and steady. "People think my strength came from surviving an illness," he said. "But my real strength came from love. My father, Arthur, gave me life. But my other father, Alex, taught me how to live it." The room erupted in applause. Alex wiped his eyes as Arthur put a proud arm around his shoulder. They stood together, two fathers, watching their son, a survivor who had turned his pain into something beautiful. The little boy who once lived in silence had become a man whose art spoke volumes, a testament to the healing power of love, courage, and the family you choose.